Joining us, this is Live with Miami's Community News, and I'm Michael Miller. Special guest today is Ernesto Custodio. Thank you very much for being here, Doctor.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
All right. So you have an MBA and a PhD in informational systems. What is that?
Sure thing. So the MBA is actually in business. That's entrepreneur. And that was here at NSU, at Nova. And the information systems, that's the one that tends to throw people for a loop. That brings technology, people, and process together. That's about how do we use technology in an efficient way in companies, in organizations, in everyday life.
So you're the CEO of Agile Genesis. Tell us about the entity, and we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence. And for the uninitiated, artificial intelligence is like the big umbrella. Then within that, there are different brands, if you will.
That's a very good way to put it.
Right?
That's a very good way to put it.
And there's some common ones that people are getting accustomed to, but this conversation is not about a specific product, but about the big picture.
Yeah.
So first tell us why you started this business and where AI is today and where it's going to be in 5 years from now.
Yeah. So the why I started this business, actually, it's a very good question. And I began with an obsession to improve businesses in my early days. I went to school in New York, in Buffalo. I'm originally from the Dominican Republic. Big contrast there, but I didn't mind the weather at the time. And when I came out, I went to work in Wall Street, where I was building networks for trading floors and others. And I saw a lot of inefficiencies in how we worked. I was really excited about working with such smart people, and they really were, but I couldn't believe how inefficient we worked, all of the processes, all of the things that got in the way. And that just subconsciously got me on this path on how do we improve how we work. And that led me into the MBA studies, and I discovered things like lean management and agile development. These are methods that we use to coordinate teams and people, right? If you're having one person do the job, that's perfect. But the minute you introduce multiple people, now you have to have a method for them to work together. So that was the collaboration aspect. And my PhD was in researching how do we get people to collaborate in a remote setting? Well, that brought me to the fact that we need the people that are skilled and well-trained, but we also need the process to go along with that. And there was a missing element in there. There was the technology that allows us to communicate together. That technology wasn't available as much as it is today with AI. So AI is that third leg in the stool that now brings the people, the process, and the technology together so that you can have an effective business.
So because of AI, people have this common connection in there. It's like in football season, basketball season, you can go anywhere and people are talking about it. You know, go to the local sports place and everybody's talking about it. That thing that binds us together. And I see that's what's happening with AI.
Yeah, what's changed in the last 5 years is the accessibility to AI. I was at a Fortune 500 before that for about 20 years, working on product development, Silicon Valley type of development. The company, in fact, was from there. And we created AI. We had to build this stuff from scratch. I had to collaborate with universities in order to create some solutions that we didn't have at the time. Today, well, I could pull out my phone and we have natural language processing, right? When we talk to Siri, that's an AI.
Sometimes people say, when did AI start? Isn't AI on our phones already?
It really is.
Because, or Google, we do it and they make a suggestion based upon your prior history.
Yeah, so you're hitting on a very important part. A lot of people are intimidated, or a lot of people are afraid of using AI. The good news is you're already using AI. You're on GPS, your Google Maps, that's AI driven. Whether you're using Waze, whether you're using Maps, whether you're using Google, it's all analyzing the routes to get you the best way there with AI.
And some of the big internet companies, when you go on and say other people that bought this also looked at such and such, or this is what you looked at before, and they put that stuff out. And probably 1 out of 6 or 7 times I buy something else because it puts forth the desire. This is what you bought before. Do you want to renew that?
Yeah. So the idea that AI, as you said, comes in different flavors, or that there are different types of AI, it's crucial. most of us are now used to, when we talk about AI, the idea of ChatGPT comes to mind, or the main tool. It's a fantastic tool. I use it every day. Highly, highly recommend it. It's got so many layers. Most of us are even scratching the surface with ChatGPT alone. Just the privacy aspects and all of the things that you can do to make sure that that is a secure connection. We could spend weeks on this. To get people excited, though, we need to take it beyond text, beyond ChatGPT. There's images, there's video, there's optimization, there's sentiment analysis, and establishing the fact that what's new here is that we finally have a technology that can maybe think, if we want to look at it that way. Now, I'll demystify in just a bit this idea that it could take over the world, and it's this thing that is going to replace everybody at work. But the fact that you can have now information transformed, that's the key difference. AI transforms information, whereas automation moves information. Think of automation as a conveyor belt where things are just moving from one place to the other automatically. AI is a little different. AI is like putting a brain on that, and now is deciding where things go and what gets on that conveyor belt. That's the big difference now.
For the people that have just been involved short time, me a year and a half, when I happen to use chat, one of the things I've learned, and it's really a life lesson, if you are asking somebody, let's personalize it, chat a question, and you're not getting the answer that you're sort of looking for, I think we have to reframe what we want to do and what we want to get. So it's taught me to be a little bit clearer. And then you go, no, let me rephrase that. and chat anticipates what you are going to do. I was in a hurry. I was writing a piece, and I said, chat, I just want you to fix the errors, punctuate it, do this. And in about 30 seconds, it was done. That allows so much time for us to spend our brains on other work. And my son, years ago, he said to me, I don't need to remember this stuff because I have it right here. And so tell us about that, people's fear that they're not going to be able to learn this stuff and that they should have to know it, not how to access it, but not like when we were kids, we had to get someplace by ourselves, not by using, our phone. So tell us about some of the fears that people have concerning that.
Yeah. So starting with the fact that, hey, you are already using AI. It's just doing it for you. That convenience is what makes it so great and so powerful. So the idea that I have a great picture on my wall, and it's a newspaper clipping actually of teachers picketing. They're complaining about the use of calculators in the classroom. Of course, this was decades ago, right? AI is having a similar effect in our everyday lives. There are a lot of people that feel that it's cheating if you're using AI as a writing assistant. You're using it as a writing assistant. It's actually the idea that if you are using someone to help you with your writing, you're still in the loop. You're the creative person behind that piece, and you're evaluating what's coming out.
A year and a half ago, I asked one of the professors at Miami-Dade this question about, if I'm writing it about me, and I put in all the information, and AI helps me do this, can I put my name on it? And he said, it's an ethical question. So I said, what if I put in 50%? It's an ethical question. I said, so when the president does a speech, most of the time, they don't write it. Somebody else writes it, but they just owned it. And I said, and they put their name on it. I said, all the books that are being written, I know the way it started. The original guy didn't do it, right, by the time it gets done. And so he says, well, it's an ethical question. Why don't you take my class? Which was very interesting. I spoke to another professor. He said, Mike, it's sort of changing a little bit now. He said, if it's in your voice, that's what matters. And that so that you can own it and in your heart, and you be able to put that in. How can people take an AI product and make it so that it's really them and not being created totally by some entity?
Completely. I lost count, but I have a lot of custom GPTs. Don't let that intimidate you. That just means that I took a GPT, I went to ChatGPT and I said, you know what, I want to create something specifically for me. And this, I want you to write it in the voice of Mark Twain. And I am going to give you a topic, and I'm going to give you some actual supporting material for that. And I want you to format it in a way that it's engaging. And I want you to be friendly. So what I've done is I've given it a model, I've given it the data, and I've given it a tone. And now it's going to generate something very specific to what I want. So think of using AI. Think of using GPT as if you were to instruct a new person here at the newspaper on how to do a job. You would need to provide them with detailed information, and then they become great employees. But if I just put you behind a desk and I say, go figure out how you're going to make this place successful, that's going to be tough.
By the way, the GPT, does that stand for something in particular?
Yeah. So it's actually, we're terrible in AI when it comes to names. So generative, the first G is generative. And it's about the idea that we are generating new content. It's actually creating something new. It's pre-trained. It's pre-trained on many sets of data. So if we just took the generative technology that's behind AI and we put it to work, it would be useless. It would totally be useless. But we've trained it, I say we, but OpenAI, with the company that did this, trained it with most of the knowledge from the internet. I say most because there were some things that were gated, but it trained it on the human knowledge. And then it transforms all of this into new data. And there you have GPT.
So in the old days, we would go to Google and they would give us a whole bunch of options to find the information that we want. I see that according to this research, that it seems though Google, people going to Google seems to have dropped a little bit, and where AI is increasing. So what does that look like for the old way of finding information?
That's a great question. In fact, I was just reading a piece. Gartner is actually predicting by 2026, there'll be a drop of 20 to 35%, if memory serves me right, on the number of searches that people are conducting in a traditional way, because we're now preferring to do it via AI. What does that mean? The idea that click to find is time consuming. If I can have an AI go out and come back, it's going to be a lot more efficient.
So in the old days, we might check 3 or 4 different things and decide which one we want to buy into.
Yeah.
So in the new way, we're going to get a response that we want to be able to trust. Is there a trustworthy level that's out there now for AI, and what might that look like in a couple of years?
Yeah, so now there's a new emerging, or there's an emerging, I would call it a conversation right now, because real tools have not come through on that. And that is the idea of AI optimization for search. How do you, as a business, tell the AI that you're an important business? We're resetting the clock. We're back to where we were in the first days of Google, right? Back in the day, these gray hairs are now painted on. I would go on and try to find some things, and it would not give me something relevant to today, right? If I searched a topic that was hot, it would just give me the historical aspect. There was this long way to go about it. Google had to make a decision at one point to tell you what's important. And we began loving Google at that point because it distilled things for us. AI today is doing that on its own. So now people are wondering, well, can we influence it so that the more prominent businesses are being showcased, to your point? How much of that we can build into it, or how much of it do we let it decide? That's the debate.
For a novice who's never done it, my suggestion, go find a program that works for you. I happen to use Chat, and it'll just say, how can I help you? And just start.
Yeah.
And I enjoy my conversations. The other day I said, give me a description of you. And so that it started. I said, and what do you look like? And it said, do you want me to be a hologram? What would you like me to be? And once you have that conversation, and it really is, I mean, I see I'm saying, please do this. It's like, oh my goodness. And there was a word that is misspelled, a word that we use as slang in newspaper, which is advertorial. He misspelled it. I said, you misspelled it. I'm so sorry, Michael. I won't do that again. I said, listen, please don't use the word tapestry or multiculturalist. I said, that's not, and for me, I don't like you to put in it, we would love to do that for you. It sounds sort of fake in a letter. Yes, sir. or whatever it was, and you realize that you can customize that to you, so it becomes in your own voice, right?
Yeah.
So there are lots of classes that are around town. A lot of the universities do it. I'm sure there's some private people. But if somebody wants to learn more and have some direction, somebody to sit down, whether it's by Zoom or whatever, what are some of their options?
Sure. So we actually run a class, and it's a foundation class. It's no code AI. Anybody can learn how to do this. So you would just, for our purpose, you go to agilegenesis.com and sign up for our class. In fact, we have one coming up next on the 14th.
And that's all by Zoom?
It's all by Zoom. It's all by Zoom. We go and we dive into the practical tools. We have use cases that you get to work on, and it brings down that barrier to entry. It gets you comfortable. First, we explain what AI is. How does this work? It's not magic. Once you understand the technology, those transformational steps that it takes, it actually makes you a very good AI user.
And so that's typically called prompt.
The prompt.
All right. And there are going to be a lot of jobs in prompting.
A lot. In fact, there's a whole field called prompt engineering.
And I tell our young people, I said, if you don't have a working knowledge of this, you're out.
I usually start the conversation with businesses. Do you want to be in business in the next 2 to 3 years? Right. If you don't jump on this, you're not ahead at this point. You need to catch up.
Yep. 30 years ago, when I got a call from the Miami Herald, we want to talk to you guys, and they were talking about the internet and AOL. I said, oh my God, what is this? And so Grant and I, my brother and I, we adopted very early within a short period of time. And whatever changes there have been because of the internet, AI seems to be 20, 30, 50 times more and faster. And it's gigantic, and it is instant reward for people, all right? You can go on, you can have them write a birthday card, you can do whatever you want with that. And so if somebody wants to, again, they can go to agilegenesis.com, right? And you have some upcoming classes. Is there a charge for that?
Yeah, they're $497 to be exact, yeah.
And so when somebody learns this, they will be able to go to their boss or a future job. Here's what I know about this. And as you pointed out, if you don't have more than a working knowledge, all right, you're going to get left behind.
That's exactly right. You know, there's so many things that we do at work, that we do every day, that we simply learn to live with, but we don't want to do them. How much do you do every day that you can offload to an AI? And like the Apple advertising, if you remember back when Apple first was becoming popular with apps, there's an app for that.
Yep.
I like to say there's an AI for that. If you have an issue, there's an AI that could probably solve it.
So the people that are afraid of it should look at it. So you can go get an app that's going to make it simpler. You can go get the stuff and make it simpler. This thing is, and I got to tell the people I know, you got to be involved. Every morning I come in, I spend a half an hour just going on and learning and understanding it, and understanding, you know, when I say take the bold out here, put this over here, change the order of things. One time I was doing a short biography, and I just put it in spontaneously, but I always put in a date. You know, of course I put it in chronologically. And it's like, I would never have been able to do that. And so it is a mammoth tool personally and for businesses. So again, Doctor, so people can find out more about the, not just the class, but this bigger picture about AI.
And that's what we help people do, navigate the landscape of AI. We're consultant agency. We're a consultancy to help you navigate, to help you find what you're trying to achieve with the best way to connect that to an AI solution. And that includes the people, that includes training the people, and that also includes the process. How are you going to make this work for you?
When we introduced it to folks here, they were all against it. Now they're not.
Yeah.
And there's other AIs, Gemini, right? And I tell people, most people can't write a letter. I get that, right? You can put it right in there, make it better. And it's like, we used to give that to a secretary or to a writer or somebody else to do it, to take the idea and create that. People can now do this instantly by themselves.
And there's so much productivity that you get out of it. Think about, I'll give you a specific fairly new technology that's out. That's a deep search, not to be confused with DeepSeek. Yep. They both use the word deep. Deep search is the idea that an AI, you have this in ChatGPT.
I'm sorry, we have 1 minute left.
Okay. It can go out and get information for you from different sites. It will run through 200 sites and collect all of that and give you a report. instead of you spending days trying to go to each site and putting that together.
So, and they will tell you a source here and source here.
Yes.
What I'm really personally pleased about when they're sourcing the newspaper, I go, yes, go, and it's a thrill. And when they're young children, they have to teach them. Again, they're already doing it. All right, it's one way or the other with most of the electronics that are there. I'd like to invite you back in a couple of weeks so we can have a more in-depth conversation.
I would love to be back. This has been great.
Ernesto, thank you so
Michael.
much. Appreciate it.
too.
We're going to look over the red camera. And folks, remember, take care of yourselves and your family. And thanks for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
all.